now being revealed that Larry Ellison, a genocidal Zionist billionaire, is directly responsible for handpicking United States senators. According to leaked emails, our current Secretary of State, Marco Rubio, was handpicked to be senator of Florida. Very cool democracy you have there, America. Larry Ellison is a Jewish billionaire oligarch whose company Oracle is directly responsible for helping Israel carry out a genocide against the Palestinian people.
So again, we love the country of Israel, and we'll do everything we can to support the country of Israel.
Also, Larry Ellison is apparently the kingmaker in United States politics and 100% the shadow president of the United States. He owns CBS, he owns CNN, and soon he will own TikTok. But for some reason, if you mention that the Jews own and control the media, they say that's an anti-Semitic conspiracy theory. These motherfuckers have been gaslighting us our entire lives. Larry Ellison and his genocidal Zionist friends now own TikTok, and they are banning and censoring people who mention AIPAC influence in American politics. It's time for Americans to come to terms with the fact that we have no sovereignty. Our country is controlled by a bunch of genocidal Zionist billionaires, and we have a fake country until we overthrow them.
What's poppin'? My friends, my family, welcome to another edition of Nick at Primetime. We are streaming live on both RBN and my personal channel, Nick Cruse. But make sure you guys switch over to my channel, Nick Cruse, if you watch on the RBN account, as the RBN YouTube channel is heavily shadow banned. What's poppin', my friends, my family? We have much to discuss. Obviously, this has been on my radar for a while. And I always try to explain to America that you have no sovereignty, to my fellow American brothers and sisters. And I have my friend Aaron Good from the American Exceptionalist podcast, great historian, writer, author. And we're going to discuss, I love having like these theoretical debates, right? To me, it's like the chicken or the egg. I explained it like that before, where there are a lot of people that say that Jewish supremacists, Zionists hijacked the United States during and after the Nakba. And I can emphasize and I can relate and understand why people made that argument. I'm more of the fan of the argument that Israel is a colonial outpost of the United States. The people who rule the West, the ruling class for generations, like it goes back to the old monarchs, the British Empire, the Napoleon days, where the Western ruling class, they always dreamed of subjugating Israel, right? I'm not subjugating Israel, it's subjugating the Middle East. They always wanted to dominate the Middle East, the same way they always wanted to dominate Russia. That's what the Ukraine war is really about. So it's not that Israel and not like Jewish supremacists hijacked, and this is my opinion, the West. It's just Israel is a colonial outpost of the United States that served their interest. And they admit this all the time. Well, why do you guys think there's such a diehard support among the ruling class for this country that does no good for us, that does nothing but put a target on our back? It's a way for the ruling class and these oligarchs to control a region that their fathers and their grandfathers and their great-great-grandfather tried to control for a very long time. That argument, I think, is more coherent. It follows the systems of imperialism. Israel is part of the giant system of United States imperialism. But don't get me wrong, man. If I'm talking to a right-winger who that argument is above, I would straight up tell them that, hey, man, yeah, Israel hijacked our society. Straight up. Whatever it takes to get the dub. You got to know your audience, man. Right-wingers, that shit works amazing on. Whenever you just say, hey, man, Benjamin Netanyahu owns Trump. Donald Trump is a cut to Bishop. That's like the best way to win over the American patriots, even though I don't necessarily agree with that overall analysis. And this is my hotspot. I'm going to bring Aaron Good on that thought. Larry Ellison, who I believe is the shadow president. Larry Ellison, the billionaire Trump friend who part of the TikTok takeover. Here's another one. This billionaire Trump ally and his son are building an unprecedented media empire. But if you mention that Jews culturally have a disproportionate control of the media. Like people who have no problems mentioning that Irish people are disproportionately CEOs. People have no problem mentioning that the NBA is made up disproportionately of black men. Like, why are these things so hard to admit? He just the tip of the iceberg. And this is the last time I'm sharing. I get my guess in here because he's not even like hiding why he's doing this. Like his company Oracle, he tells his employees that if you don't love Israel and you're not willing to serve Israel, you might as well quit. The Oracle execs love Israel, or maybe this is not the job for you. Now this guy picks Barry Weiss, who is probably the least talented person in media, and now she's the head editor of CBS. You guys see how this cabal works? But I'm going to get Aaron Good thoughts on here. Friend of RBN, host of the American Exceptionalist podcast, historian, author as well. And I love your takes on the CIA. We discussed that a lot. Your takes on the JFK assassination and the CIA ties with that. Aaron Good has a lot of great information that he can share with us tonight. What's your thoughts on this, Aaron Good? Welcome to RBN once again.
Yeah, thank you for the invitation. And I think that the questions you were raising are important, and your analysis is somewhat contradictory in that you would say that, Ellison is the shadow president, and then, but Israel also does everything that the U.S., or that Israel is a colonial outpost. And they kind of are. I wouldn't go as far as either one, but there are elements of truth to both of these. The real question is, what is it that determines U.S. foreign policy? It's not so much, in my reading of things, a question of Israel is here and the U.S. is over there, and one is either in control or not in control. What you're really talking about in the U.S. is an oligarchy of wealth and power that determines foreign policy and the grand strategy of the U.S. empire. And I believe that since World War II, as the U.S. pursued global empire, Zionists, mostly Jewish Zionist oligarchs, have done everything they could to steer U.S. foreign policy in a direction that they deemed to be good for the Zionist project. And we have a whole history of this country that, especially since the end of World War II, that is suppressed and unknown to people and obscure. And in particular, I'm talking about the role of organized crime in the U.S. and its connections to the U.S. establishment and the so-called legitimate elites and oligarchs of the United States. In 1941 or 40, what year was it? You have Operation Underworld, which I think kicks off in 41 or 43. But it's the point is, it is a alliance between the U.S. national security state and the National Crime Syndicate. And Meyer Lansky was really the head of the National Crime Syndicate, along with Lucky Luciano. But Luciano was in jail, and Lansky was not. And Meyer Lansky, who is a super Zionist person, his family immigrated from Poland, I believe, and he along with Luciano organized the mafia, as it was, or the organized crime, the mob, into a nationwide organization. And the U.S. partnered with them, the precursor to the CIA, which was called the OSS, and naval intelligence. And they gave them control of some of the docks in order to supposedly stop sabotage, but of course that helps to bring in a lot of drugs. And that's the part that they always leave out when they talk about Lansky. They always talk about him as this guy who was into gambling, and so on, but they leave out, because he established Las Vegas. But the drugs were the real money. And in 1945, the President of the United States, Harry Truman, a mobbed-up fellow himself, really from a corrupt, mobbed-up political machine in Kansas City run by this guy named Terry Pendergast. He is vice president and then president after Roosevelt dies. In 1945, he gives Meyer Lansky the Medal of Freedom in a secret ceremony. He gives the head of the National Crime Syndicate, the head of the organized crime in the United States that has essentially a monopoly on the drug traffic, he gives him the Medal of Freedom. And in 1945, also, Lansky sets up in Mexico with an associate named Harold Meltzer this big drug pipeline of heroin and so on. And in order to be able to launder that money, he sets up the city of Las Vegas. And this is really how Las Vegas gets founded by Meyer Lansky and Bugsy Siegel. And it's really set up in order to have these casinos that deal with high cash transactions, lots of cash transactions, which is perfect for laundering drug money. So that's the origin of Las Vegas, which I think gets established in 1946, really. So this is intertwined with the Teamsters and so on. The Teamsters, along with Meyer Lansky and Jimmy Hoffa and the Teamsters, they were some of the key people involved in getting the arms to Israel in 1948. And they establish this organized crime syndicate, but they also have protection. Meyer Lansky has protection from J. Edgar Hoover at the FBI and the head of the Federal Bureau of Narcotics, Harry Anslinger. So, as well as the CIA chief of counterintelligence, James Angleton, who, not coincidentally, handled the Israel account. So he interfaced with Mossad in a very secretive way that a lot of the rest of the CIA wasn't even aware of. So the National Crime Syndicate was protected by essentially law enforcement and the national security state, and they controlled a monopoly on the drug traffic, and they laundered it all in places like Las Vegas and other banks around the Swiss banks. People like Tibor Rosenbaum are connected to the Rothschild family, and they are running all of these.
And you wrote all this down in the book, didn't you?
I have some of this in, a lot of this is in Peter Dale Scott's book, Deep Politics and the Death of JFK, as well as a book he wrote in 2010 called American War Machine. Peter is really the guru of people who studied the clandestine and mob-related aspects of the American establishment. A lot of my dissertation is based on his research. But what I found in doing a big oral history project with Peter and in studying more closely some of his work is that he, for personal reasons, namely that I found this out after talking to him, he was given death threats. He would minimize a lot of the role of Israel in his work because he's married to a Zionist.
Of course.
And he got death threats. And he actually, he's 96 now, and I think that his generation, they take anti-Semitism more seriously than we do as a concept.
Yeah,
For
they was the
lifetime,
victim of the Holocaust, like media apparatus. There was a giant Holocaust media, gigantic market created by these Zionists to spread the word about
the Holocaust industrial complex or something. Like that.
Yeah. I think that's exactly the best way to put it, Aaron. You're 100% correct. Please continue.
So he noticed all of these things and he wrote about them. With Jack Ruby and the Kennedy assassination, it's especially obvious because he has all these ties to the crime syndicate. I mean, Jack Ruby was far from, a low-level mafiosi or whatever, the way that they tried to describe him. He was there was a guy named Lewis Kuttner who was his lawyer. In the early 1950s, there's this thing called the Kefauver Committee, and they investigate organized crime for Congress. And Lewis Kuttner said after Oswald was killed by Jack Ruby, he says that Ruby was a syndicate lieutenant in Dallas, and he testified to the Kefauver Committee about Chicago, where he had been, in exchange for them leaving Dallas alone and not going and investigating Dallas very much. So all these investigations into the mafia, they tried to, with Hoover and the head of the FBN, they tried to recast it as an Italian thing. So it's the mafia, it's the Italian mafia. And this is kind of a myth because they're just one component of it. They're almost like the retail component of it. But really, Lansky, with his control over the money laundering aspect of it, and because he had really the fix with the authorities, meaning he was never wiretapped. In all the years that they were going after organized crime figures, he was never wiretapped. The only U.S. high official that really went after them and the Las Vegas mob seriously was Robert F. Kennedy. And he gives up on that after his brother is killed, but he notes that the guys that Ruby was in contact with before the assassination were all the people that he talked to on the Rackets Committee. And Ruby was in the room when a union official was murdered in 1939 named Leon Cook, and that union was taken over by Dorfman, this guy Paul Dorfman, or maybe it's Alan Dorfman. I always get him. One's the son, one's the stepson. But this marked the beginning of the Teamster, the mob takeover of Teamster pension funds. So all these truck drivers that are in the unions, they pay into this pension fund, and then the pension funds can make loans to people. Well, they make a lot of loans to Las Vegas casinos to build them up and to build this big illusion of Vegas, which serves to conceal that it's also a massive drug money laundering operation. And additionally, Ruby, close associates of Ruby were involved in this high level murder of James Reagan, who was the guy that controlled the gambling racing wire service. It was this nationwide system of like getting the earliest results on horse races and so on. And it was a way to corrupt local governments and city governments, especially because if they start taking bribes for a little bit of gambling, what's the harm there? But then you've kind of got them for everything else because they're on the payroll of the mob and they're compromised. And this way of compromising officials and law enforcement, the way that plays out with the syndicate, it ends up having a big role in politics. And so somebody like Ruby, it becomes too big to fail. The Meyer Lansky once said, the National Crime Syndicate is bigger than U.S. Steel, which was the biggest U.S. corporation at the time. They brought in so much money, and I think that this is a source of some of these oligarchs that are super Zionists, is that they are very networked into this Zionist, political project, and so which seems to control the fix. And by the fix, I mean the people that are allowed to engage in economic activity like drug trafficking and so on, without having to worry about the officials, law enforcement officials, busting them.
And remember, guys, there are Likud party members who often mention all the time that Jews are above the law. So there's a lot of belief in the ruling class that coincides with it. They 100% would support this if it helped fund their activity, right? But please continue, Aaron. Good.
So what I'm saying here is that these are people who have some agency, okay? People, you hear like some of these fake left people say, oh, don't say that the U.S. overthrew, the government of Ukraine, because then you're taking away the agency of these Ukrainian, National Endowment for
That's the
Democracy
Cory Bush
troops,
left.
right? Yeah, I mean, it's so silly, the left, what passes for the left in the U.S. But these are billionaires. I mean, they're billionaires at this point. Larry Ellison, the Adelson family. And, it's quite notable that when they wanted to assassinate Assange and they wanted to surveil Assange, they used the Adelson Sands Casino security outfit. And that the Sands Casino was literally a Lansky joint. And that's one of Donald Trump's biggest supporters. And it's basically like the same milieu. They operate now in Macau, so it's a lot of money from Asia. And okay, maybe the gambling thing, who knows how much people actually gamble, but the point of it is, it's so easy to launder money that way. I mean, it's quite possible that a lot of that money is just laundered drug money because they've got the fix still. There's still these big, the drug traffic is still an arm of the U.S. imperial establishment, I have to believe. That's probably the reason for a lot of the Bitcoin and other cryptocurrency and stuff, is that now it's so easy. They have a bazillion ways to launder money in different ways and different schemes. But the bigger issue is not the nefarious role of Zionists in really destroying the U.S. imperial position, because I think that's what they've done in the 21st century. The bigger issue is we have this capitalist system where everything is for sale. And I think that this cohort of people were very successful at understanding this. A really good book on this, which only deals with it sort of abstractly, is called The Money and the Power by Sally Denton and Roger Morris, who used to be in the National Security Council. But they describe, it's about Las Vegas. It's the making of Las Vegas in modern America. But when you think about Vegas as this place that doesn't really produce anything, it's just a kind of illusion, and then it's probably fueled by a lot of drug money too. And it's like the capital of the American deep state, you could say, is Las Vegas, because it's the site of all of this money laundering and organized crime. And it's really Lansky's insight into the fact that everything is for sale in America, and that really the key is not to try to gamble, but to own the casino. That you own the game and you rig the game. That's the position you want to be in, and that's just basically capitalism. I mean, you're not
Exactly.
really there to make an honest buck. These billionaires get monopoly positions or use their insider status to to nail down markets, et cetera, exploit people overseas, use political connections in every way possible. There's a problem with our system that is all we've organized a civilization around money and expropriation and exploitation, and that's the heart of the problem. It's not this or that group, this or that ethnic group, or whatever. Although in this case,
No,
Zionism
trust me, I agree
has a
with that.
crazy role in all of this.
No, trust me, I 100% agree with that. And especially the American capitalist interests are inherently tied to imperialism. That's why I often say the United States is a glorified arms dealer masquerading as a state, which is why the social programs are so shitty because they don't care. And
Or it's
if
just a
I
crime
was,
syndicate. It's a big crime syndicate.
yeah, crime syndicate, and they love selling weapons. That's part of what many mafias and crime syndicates used to be. They beating
Sell
guns around.
anything. Sell
Yeah,
anything. Organs,
sell
traffic
drugs.
people, drugs,
Yeah.
everything.
We're gonna. I'm already loving the direction of this conversation, Aaron. I'm gonna end the RBN stream. If you're on the RBN channel, it should automatically redirect you. I think Zoya's live. I think she set it up where it will automatically redirect you to my personal channel. If not, you can always click the link in the description. If it didn't work, because this is the first time we tried it. So I'm gonna end the RBN stream now, and I'm gonna continue.